Oi oi people, Silky here, and you're listening to the Lifer Musician Podcast, a podcast exploring the minds of creatives who've dedicated their lives to pursuing a career in music. The Lifer Musician Podcast is brought to you by Hookings Management, my artist services company that empowers our fellow DIY musicians to grow a monetised fan base without a record label. We offer a range of services such as online marketing, artist mentorship, release campaign management, videography, photography, graphic and website design, plus tons more useful services that are built to cater for independent musicians on small, self-funded budgets. Helping musicians market and monetize their art form is our passion. So if you're an artist that needs help taking your career to the next level, please feel free to reach out and get in touch via hookingsmanagement.com, where you can book a video call with me for some free advice on your project. On today's episode, my good pal and colleague at Hookings Management, Bradley Tyler, will be joining me to discuss the importance of crowdfunding for independent artists. Brad's band, 2 Year Break, raised £12,000 in crowdfunding for their debut album release in 2021, and my band Death with Guitar Pop has now raised a total of £60,000 in crowdfunding for our 4 DIY album releases. We've also helped many other DIY artists raise money through crowdfunding, so we've got a lot of experience in this field and hope that by sharing some of our knowledge will inspire more independents to utilise this method for funding their releases. Let's get into it. So Brad, mate, thank you for coming on the podcast again.
Thank you for having me again.
Pleasure. So today we're going to talk about crowdfunding.
Yep.
And I think a good place to start would be our apprehensions and the general stigma around crowdfunding for musicians. Obviously you guys were pretty apprehensive about doing a crowdfunding campaign. I had those same apprehensions, and a lot of musicians that we talk to feel the same about it. So yeah, where do you think that comes from, mate?
Where's it come from? I think it's because of the way, I'm not saying it's the wrong way, but the way just everyone consumes music, how things are seen online, like the idea of asking people, or crowdfunding isn't this, what I'm about to say, but the idea of asking people to help fund your project, you know, there's this sort of stigma of like it sounding beggy, and I think that's because I don't actually really know why. It's just I think there's almost like the things you probably see online, or used to see maybe online, when less people did that stuff. I don't know where I'm going with this because I don't actually know if I know the answer to that. I think it's just
it's an interesting
because I've only ever known I'll do a crowdfund, and my immediate reaction is, is that the right? Like my immediate reaction was that. Why? I don't. Because I thought it felt beggy. Why do I feel beggy? I don't know. I don't actually know why. And I've only ever known you to not be apprehensive about it, because you was the one that kind of like not talked to me, but like introduced the idea of it. Yeah. So I actually am kind of interested to see. I've never seen you when you was like apprehensive about it. Like what was you like when you, like what made you?
Yeah. What sort of changed my outlook on it? Well, I don't know really. I think I was like, as I've mentioned before on this podcast, I was like really hung up on having a record deal and going down the traditional route for years, because, you know, all the stuff you read about and watch on the documentaries, that's just how it was. Do you know what I mean? Like you sort of read about Oasis and whoever else, all these bands that like, you know, you that inspired you when you were growing up. They all kind of had record deals, do you know what I mean? And sort of growing up in like the 90s and the noughties, the music industry was still this big, you know, fucking pot of gold, and it was in a real, like, it was at its peak, I guess, do you know what I mean, before the downloading started. So there was a lot of money out there, do you know what I mean? A lot of advance money out there for artists. And I don't know where it come from. I guess when it first come about, crowdfunding, it was new, so it was unorthodox.
Was Kickstarter one of the first?
Yeah.
Because you used to see people kickstart any, like, the new phone they're trying to make or something. Yeah. It wasn't music based, not necessarily.
Yeah, I think Kickstarter was one of the first. But I think maybe my negative perception of it was some of the bands that were doing it when I first come across it were bands that had been like dropped by major labels and were kind of on a bit of a like downturn in their career. Maybe that's where it comes from. And then also it's just that thing of, we spoke about this before, you and I, on this podcast. There's a weird sort of shame thing attached to charging for things as musicians, because the way in which you kind of come up as a grassroots band, you have to accept getting paid nothing, do you know what I mean, doing these pub gigs for like 50 quid in a crate if you're lucky. And you sort of, there's some weird kind of like shame attached to charging fans for your music, and obviously crowdfunding is, I don't know, maybe it's where people associate that with like raising money for charity and things like that.
Maybe.
You know, they might feel like, well, our cause isn't as important as that. Do you know what I mean? So, there's not really a one clear answer for this, but you know, I had my apprehensions about it. You had your apprehensions about it. Most artists that we work with at Hookings, that we've encouraged to go down that path, and they've gone down that path and been successful in it, they're apprehensive about it as well, and they don't want to come across as too beggy, too pushy or whatever. But I think the tide's changing now and it's becoming more normalised. I think it was Pledge Music that went bust a few years ago, and that didn't help,
did it? No.
Yeah, because I think a lot of artists didn't get their money, and as a result, fans didn't get their albums that they pre-ordered and stuff because the company went bust, and Pledge Music was one of the biggest. So that was a real shame, and I think that certainly would have, created more stigma around it. But that was a little while ago now, and what we've seen in the past couple of years in Hookings is, artists are really utilising this from the ground up, and funding their debut albums and raising a good few £1,000 off like quite a small fan base to kickstart their artist business. And I think, my next point was that, fans understand there's no money in streaming and it's difficult for new bands to fund tours. So they want to support you financially in any way that they can. And I think actually a lot of the time fans kind of, they get it more. Like artists, we sort of do ourselves a little bit of a disservice and feel guilty sometimes for charging for these things, which is so daft because we're a business just like any other business. But there is this weird thing, this weird mindset that seems to be quite, prominent throughout sort of the independent space. But yeah, fans get it. They know, they've read about like how streaming pays fuck all, and they see bands having to pull tours all the time because, it's trying to make it work financially is a very difficult thing. So, I think fans understand that there's no like fucking huge advances out there for rock bands anymore. If there are, they're fucking, rare as rocking all shit. So they fucking, they understand that shit. There's no Top of the Pops anymore. Do you know what I mean? MTV don't play music videos anymore, I don't think. These platforms, they're not as big as they used to be, or they're not there anymore. And so fans understand that. So the fans funding an artist's career and release through crowdfunding is becoming more normalised. And I think as long as you own it as a DIY musician and you're transparent with your fans and explain to them, if we can do this, we can remain independent and we don't have to go and try and pursue a record deal, or sign a record deal and then, someone else is in control of our output. Tell us a bit about your experience with 2 Year Break, from being apprehensive to taking a leap of fear and going ahead with it. Tell us how it all began and what the end result was, and just the experience as a whole.
Well, my experience of it, I was going to mention it earlier as well, it's like, I'm going to use the wrong terms here, but musicians want to make music first and foremost. So the idea of, charging people isn't their first protocol of like, oh, we need to make money. You kind of start just wanting to make music for fun.
Yeah.
But then also, eventually you realise, well, if I want to do it properly and I want to have people turn up and people hear it and, you know, play shows to lots of people, not necessarily because they want to be famous, just because they want to express themselves in that way and do that as a career, they then obviously realise, well, the only way I can play to that many people is that I will need to, you've got to make money from it, or you've got to, if you play a show, you can't just play a show, like, it doesn't, I mean, maybe not everyone knows, but you don't just turn up and start playing with bands and start filling out rooms. Like, you've got all these other elements that come into it, which, down to the nitty gritty of it, costs money to do. Or, you know, if you want to go on tour, you've got to spend loads, you know, you've got to pay for that van, you've got to hire the venues, or you've got to find bands that will put you on. And yeah, you come to terms with the fact that if you want to do it as a career, you need to let go of, I don't want to, I'm doing it for the music. Like, you are still doing it for the music, but if you want it to continue, got to make money. So at some point I obviously had that kind of realisation. I still didn't want to do crowdfunding because I think we've mentioned it in one of the other podcasts, but when you brought it up to me, I was a bit like, apprehensive. I didn't like the idea of asking people for money, even though I think the way I came to terms with it is when my favourite bands release an album, or they're starting to release an album, they will, you know, put pre-orders up a month or two before. And essentially, as long as you're going to follow through with your album, in my head, that's what a crowdfund is, really. It's like an earlier pre-order. Like, you're still, the bands that are bringing out their album in 2 months, and all the labels put their stuff online to pre-order and get bundles with signed posters and signed T-shirts and the record or whatever. They're just pre-orders for the record in advance, which is essentially what a crowdfund is.
Yeah, because the record's not manufactured at that point, is it?
No, most of the time, no. It's probably, a way to, like, well, if we get the pre-orders in, we know that we can buy 10,000 albums or 4,000 albums or whatever, and not overbuy and run out or whatever. So yeah, obviously a crowdfund is more in the early stages when you might not have maybe, you know, paid for all the studio time yet, or paid for those manufacturing, or even necessarily designed the album artwork yet. But it's still the same thing, in my opinion, as long as you're a band that knows you're going to do it and follow through with it all. Like, when we did the crowdfund, even if we didn't make that money, we wanted to make an album, we would have somehow or another found a way to do it. We might have ended up, you know, going a bit bankrupt, or trying to get loans and being in a bit of a screwed up position, but we wanted to make that album. So, you know, I think our fans trusted us that when we put, you can pre-order this and pre-order this, we're not just then going to take all their money and run. Because bands don't do that. And I'm sure there are bands that maybe do that, but that wasn't, bands don't do that. And that, a crowdfund, in my opinion, was just the pre-order thing. And that's how I came to terms with it, because, you know, like, just what you were saying about record labels earlier, like, about there's no money in it. Like, there obviously is deals being made, and if the right deal came to me and if the right deal came to you, you'd consider it, you'd look through the sheets, the numbers and whatever. Like, I'm not saying don't ever do them, but you are right in the fact that, like, the smaller bands, they're getting given like $4,000, $5,000 up front, maybe $10,000 at best, if you're like even at like the level that To Your Break are at. I don't know. I don't know the numbers, but I'm pretty sure they're the kind of numbers you're looking at from a label. Yeah. And that's not, you know, it sounds like a lot of money if you're not, you know, to just receive. But when you look at all the things you've got to pay for,
it's fuck all for like a full campaign cycle.
If you can,
obviously it's a substantial amount of money, but in terms of like what it takes to break an artist, you know,
scratches the surface. You know, labels will spend loads and loads of money on bands. The ones that get big, there's been so much money spent on them, and you know, labels have to take that risk. And when you're a smaller band, not at that level, or maybe the record label hasn't seen you or whatever, you have to be the one that kind of makes that risk. But you can't make that without the money. So having the fans there to help pay for the album can help you sort of like, you kind of become your own sort of your own label.
Your own label. Yeah, the way I perceive it is, it's like, you know, you're kind of generating your own record company advance for your album from your fan base?
Because you know the label money back. If they give you $5,000, they have to get that back at some point. They don't just give it to you and be like, sweet, we're giving you money, enjoy it. Like you have to make that back. So essentially, you're just like you say, you're making your own
getting
advances.
all the orders up front, and therefore creating like an advance for yourself that you can then reinvest into manufacturing, marketing. Maybe I was going to say a tour, but that would be part of the marketing.
I think sorry, just to jump.
That's all right.
I don't know if people realise how much all those things cost. Because one of the things I was scared about is like, what do I put my crowdfund target at? And then I think we were going to go 5,000, and then I think you maybe helped make us go for 10 grand.
Yeah.
Even if we weren't going to make it, it's better to kind of go a little bit above what you was going to. To be fair, we needed like 15, but we weren't going to.
It's always the way.
We weren't going to say that on, because for our first crowdfund, I thought that's a bit too far. But like,
you weren't far off though, were you?
No, it was. We managed to, raise 12,628 or something. It was over 12, and that massively helped us. But in terms of like what the number should be, obviously it varies artist to artist, but like, vinyls are expensive if you want to do a vinyl run, and people do like vinyls and they're a good product to sell, but obviously you've got to sell enough to make the money back. It's like they're expensive. To record your music, most studios, like, let's forget the producer for a minute and just go for like studio hire. If you want a decent studio, or you're looking at like 200 quid a day, maybe about 150 to 250. Mm-hmm. And an album, if it's
I'd say that's cheap,
Yeah, I mean, but it's because I think I've been able to get some good deals in my time. But okay, like less than the cheaper scale, but like, and then you've got a producer sometimes that you need to pay as well, unless you know how to do it to a good enough standard you're happy with. So like, you're looking at like 500, 600, including producer a day, to have them for a day and hire the studio for a day. You do that for 2 weeks, like that's a lot of
money.
What I'm trying to say is like, we raised 12.6k, right? Our producer and the studio, and by the way, we didn't even use a studio. We used a Airbnb like cottage. Mm-hmm. We just used a studio for a few days to do drums. Yeah, and then all the other stuff was like all done on the computer with like our producer's like plugins that he's got on his software, or the software he's got on his computer. But that like Airbnb was probably like 200 quid a day to have, which is the same price as a studio. And like by the time we'd done all that 12.6k had kind of, pretty much already been spent on just that. And then you've got to make the vinyls and the CDs and all this. So it's a lot of money. Yeah. And I think even if you're not going to make all the money that you need to make for it, it's still worth doing it, because that's money you wouldn't have had if you. That's money
as long
that's
as you
left
can
on
fulfill the album. Yeah, exactly.
Obviously, if you don't fulfill the album, then you're a bad person. You shouldn't be crowdfunding. No.
Yeah, I mean, it's and that's the thing as well. There's so Amanda Palmer from the Dresden Dolls. She famously raised over $1 million on Kickstarter. So the sky really is a limit with this, and what that can do for your career. Do you know what I mean? In terms of being able to pay yourself and your team salaries, have an incredible marketing budget to get the record out to as many people as possible. So this is something that you can kind of scale, every cycle. So when we started, we had, I think it was 197 backers. The goal was like 7 or 8 grand, and we raised about 6.5. It's actually the 5-year anniversary of our debut album release today, 69 Cans.
Go pre-ordering that. Plugging it. Plug that baby.
Yeah, man. So it's like fucking, in the 5 years since that's come out, album 2, we raised, I think it was like 11 grand. I think the goal was 10, and we smashed it, like raised 11.
I think I came in just a bit before, during that, so I don't remember exactly. But yeah,
I feel like you were on board for that one. or maybe it was just before you joined the team. And then the third album, Pucker Sounds, was 21,000, and the latest one is still running at the moment for album 4, hoping to get that out sort of next August, September time. That's on £31,989.89 with 989 backers. So, we're scaling it every time, and obviously our overheads are going up because we're having to fulfill more physical orders, so the manufacturing costs are becoming more substantial. We're still sort of keeping it pretty sensible in terms of production. We've not really gone, any more
10
elaborate.
different vinyls, 10 different colours.
Yeah, choir of didgeridoo players, like fucking whatever else. We've kept it pretty simple. I mean, we are doing the multiple formats now that we're sort of, the last album charted, and touch with this one will as well. Obviously, releasing multiple formats is good for that because you've got super fans that want to buy everything and support and collect everything you put out. But not much has changed in terms of the studio production side of that side of the costs. But what the main thing that we can do by raising all that extra money is pay ourselves a small salary, but then have a much more substantial marketing budget. To pump back into growth marketing on these Facebook and Instagram ads. Get the band in front of a new audience. And by the time the cycle's finished and we're at the end of release week, we've onboarded those fans and kind of ascended them through the back catalogue so that they've bought to the point where they've invested in the new album and bought the new album on pre-order or on the week of release. So yeah, every time we're sort of scaling it up, and what that means is that the marketing budget is getting bigger and bigger every time. So therefore we've got more to spend on going out there, and acquiring new fans through the ads. And then maybe this time we'll try some other stuff like radio promotion, streaming promotion, things like that.
That's all expensive as well.
Yeah, man. Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. Like, I've been burnt with it. I know you had a pretty good experience with it, but yeah, it still comes at a cost. But yeah, so that we might have the luxury of being able to do that next time round. Up until now, it's been pretty much just Facebook and Instagram ads because that's tried and tested. A little bit of YouTube as well. We've not really wanted to risk spending like thousands on like a radio campaign or a streaming promotions company, but maybe that's something we'll look into this time. Now we've got a bigger pot. So yeah, kind of just to sort of add on that, like, so the 989 backers that we've got so far.
Hold up, mate. I think the fridge wants to join the podcast.
Switch that off. So yeah, what I was going to add to that was our sort of average price per album purchase this time round was £32.34. And it's because of the unique perks that you can offer, like within the campaign. Yeah, I mean, if you were just selling like standard album formats on pre-order, you couldn't maximize your monetization from your super fans like in the same way that we can with crowdfunding, because what we're offering with crowdfunding is like unique experiences, like come and sing at the studio with the band, come down to a rehearsal, test press vinyls. So we sell like props from music videos. There's loads of kind of unique perks. Handwritten lyric sheets is another one.
I think, just to jump, one of my favourite ones is the one I think one of the best ideas to always do on a crowdfund is sometimes instead of selling, a drum skin, or I don't know, you're willing to give up your guitar or whatever that you wrote the album on or whatever, is doing the raffle version of it. So if you put a cool drum skin on there, or some really unique item that's been on your music videos that everyone's pointed out loads of times, and you give it away or whatever. Doing a raffle means that people won't be spending as much money, but more people might spend. More people will buy a raffle ticket, and then you'll end up giving one person this really cool, unique item that only they can have. But loads of people have jumped into getting the raffle, so you end up accumulating maybe more than you was going to maybe sell that drum skin for.
Absolutely, yeah.
It's way some bands you can use that not just in crowdfund. If you're but during COVID, bands raised money for the NHS, so they'd put, I don't know, some cool item on their shop for like £2 a raffle ticket, and then shit tons of people would, it's only £2. I might have a chance to win that. And then they raised lots of money for the NHS and stuff like that. And when you're trying to raise money for your band to get your advances in like crowdfunding and that, putting a drum skin up there, instead of selling that drum skin for £50, put a raffle ticket up for £3 for a raffle ticket or something, and you probably make more than the 50 quid you was going to make, because people don't mind that little like.
Well, it gives everyone a chance.
Yeah,
then,
it does. Yeah, instead of someone going like, well, I've got £1,000, bam.
Like, yeah, and you're banking that you've got someone out there who loves the band that much and has got that kind of money to drop on something like that. We did like a signed Squire Telecaster guitar, and sold a lot of raffle tickets for that, and it kind of gave everyone a chance of having it. And as you say, we raised more money through the raffle ticket sales than we would have if we'd have sold it as like an individual item on there for a few £100 or whatever.
I think it's more fun as well.
Yeah, it's like, more inclusive and good way to engage the fan base.
It's a fair game.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so all those kind of things drive that price per purchase up, that customer value up. So that's really important. I've made this point before, and I think last time we chatted about it, our average album price was like £25, or our average crowdfunding purchase, was £25. And this campaign has been running since that. And yeah, as I say, it's gone up to £32 odd per purchase. And a really good point that Ellis made when we had a break just now.
Producer Ellis.
Shout out to Ellis. Was, one of the things, so the stigma and the apprehension that bands feel about crowdfunding. Really good point. I never really thought about this actually, because I personally didn't feel like this on the second time round, because the second time we were doing crowdfunding, our fans were calling it on, saying, when you're going to crowdfund album 2 and 2. So that was really encouraging and gave us the confidence to go ahead with it, and we weren't as apprehensive this time. But I guess other artists might be more apprehensive, like, we've already done the crowdfunding thing, can we really ask our fan base again? And every time we've done it, we've raised more money, and the sort of average purchase value has gone up every time. So that is reassuring in itself. Or I hope it's reassuring for artists that are listening, that are thinking about launching a crowdfunding campaign, or maybe they've done it before but they're apprehensive about doing it again. I think as long as you're delivering on the album, and it's and the body of work is good and the fans are into it, they'll want another one. And they completely understand that you're DIY, and they're compassionate. They understand that there's not this funding out there anymore, and record sales aren't what they used to be. People don't buy music en masse like they used to, like buy physical CDs and things like that. It's kind of mainly streaming now, and everybody knows how poorly that pays. I just see streaming as it is an income stream, and we probably, because we're independent, we're not having to give away any of that, so we're not experiencing like a label taking a massive cut of that. So it is a fairly substantial income stream. I think if you get the numbers up, when you do the maths on like some of the really big artists that look at their streams, there will be some people out there doing massive numbers. But if you are small, especially if you're having to share that royalty with a label or something, the sort of the royalty rate doesn't lie, does it? Whatever it is, 0.001 pence for a stream, or whatever the fuck it is. So I just kind of see YouTube and Spotify and anywhere else you can stream music, they're just sort of discovery platforms.
I mean, they're massively, like, they're great for that. The more streams you've got and monthly listeners, they do all go hand in hand on other things or whatever. But they're not. If I woke up tomorrow and it said you have 60,000 monthly listeners and you've had 1 million streams in like a day, I don't think my first thought would be like, I wonder how much money we're going to get for that. It would be like, loads of people have just discovered us. This is great. We can play more shows. Maybe they're going to come. Like my thought process is like Spotify as great it is as Discover in terms of like money at the level that we're at, it's just a cool little bit of pocket money that comes in every now and again. You're like, oh sweet, we just got £200 last month.
It probably shouldn't be like that, but it is. Do you know what I mean?
No, I tried to work this out. If you made it £1 or something ridiculous per stream, then Spotify would probably go under quite quickly. If everyone was getting £1 per stream or what, like, I mean, you could maybe up it a little bit, but if you go too far.
Well, I don't think they've made like massive profits.
No, I think they're always investing. Or
Spotify, they've invested everything back into growth or whatever. You know, it's a controversial one because a lot of that is at the artist's expense, but then we're all participating, aren't we? We're all on there. You know what I mean?
Because I've been addicted to the Spotify monthly listener grind. Can't help it.
And that's why things like crowdfunding, you know, going back to the point is so important for artists, because at least we've got that. Do you know what I mean? We've got a way of kind of giving our fans a chance to pay for our art, you know. And you know, it could be as little as like a £1 donation, or you know, on our most recent crowdfunding campaign, a fan actually bought an acoustic private like concert at their house for £2,000, you know. So like, but you're never gonna make that kind of money unless you've got it on your crowdfunding, on your Shopify there and available. You never know until you try it. Do you know what I mean? Like, we didn't think, we obviously thought there might be a chance that someone might pay for that, but we weren't banking on it by any means. But the fact that we've actually put it out there and given ourselves the opportunity to earn that money and have a fan, you know, buy that experience, you know, it's
I was like, you know, when I come to terms with doing the crowdfund, there wasn't like, there were stages of it. So the first stage was like, okay, we're gonna do it. And it was like, what we're gonna sell? Yeah, I'm all right with that. And then there was other things that would come up, and I'd be like, I'm not all right with selling that. But I obviously ended up doing the, you know, maybe someone might give it a go or whatever. And we put up the private acoustic gig on there if anyone wanted it, and we put up like coming to our rehearsals. And I remember feeling a little bit like, oh, is that a bit, I don't know about that. But then 5 or 6 people bought the rehearsal one, and 1 person bought the acoustic show. And every person that I've met through doing that, like all them, even like just forgetting the money side of things, like going to having those people like that love you know, love your music enough that want to pay for that. Obviously, that first of all, I'm massively grateful for that. But when they come to the rehearsal, or we've gone to play that show, the memories and the kindness and like how nice the people are and how fun that whole experience is, you know, I happily will put them on there again just to experience meeting people and having a laugh with all these, because they'd like, I think one of them was like a dad and his kid like wanted to come to see a rehearsal, and the kid was so good at drums and guitar, like
when he jammed
it was guitar mainly, but he had like a rhythm, that just a natural rhythm, and we like played Green Day with him, and
wicked.
And you know, like they're things that just like that wouldn't have happened if I, you know, first of all, it wouldn't happen if you bought it, but I wouldn't, if we were too scared to put little things like that, I wouldn't have had, you know, those really cool experiences where like, you know, you get to meet people face to face and like, you know, learn about them, have laughs with them, get to watch a kid playing guitar that's probably going to end up being fucking super sick at guitar, and when he's, you know, gets into a band when he's in college or whatever. And
that means so much to him, that experience.
Well, that'd be hilarious if in my like 50s, I'm like, have you seen this band? They're playing the O2, and it's like the kid that played guitar in my shit little rehearsal room.
Yeah, I mean, we've had similar things with like, so on the last record, fans like paid to come down to the studio and sing on the album. So
can I just ask one question?
Yeah.
Was auto-tune put on their voices? Be real.
Well, it was like a terrace chant vocal, so it was like, you know, no singing skills were required.
I just imagine one of them going, I'm a really good singer, please let me sing. And they're like,
no, it was I mean, singing, you know, it was like, it was a terrace chant, but it was fucking great.
What chant was it?
The Dog Pee Shuffle one.
Yeah.
So it ended up being like the lead single for the album, and it was cool because like, a group of fans came down. They got to listen to like all the sort of, you know, desk mixes of like they got to hear the songs as they were still being worked on. So they were the first people to ever hear those songs. We all gathered around the mic and sang a gang vocal on one of the singles, and it was good fun. So I mean that was a great experience for them, and it helped us fund the record, like their contributions. So yeah, as you say, it's a great way of kind of like, sort of, experience a bit more intimacy with like your biggest fans, which is a lovely thing. And I think that to add to that,
now when I see them at shows, like I feel like I know them.
Yeah,
and they'll come up to me, and we can have a chat, like a little bit more, more of a chat than you might. Not that you don't want to chat to your fans, but like I actually can connect with them now because, I've heard their ghost story they've told me, or just like that's random, but like they've told me about a ghost story or something.
It gets more random than that.
Yeah, it does get more random than that. But yeah, you have that a bit more of a bond with them. And it's just really cool. Yeah,
I think that's part of this DIY model. You do sort of become like pals, didn't you, with a lot of your like most dedicated supporters. That's just when you've got like a fan club running and a group where you do like a live Q&A every month, and the same people are turning up, and like you do the meet and greets at the show and everything. You get to know your most sort of dedicated supporters, and they become friends, which is nice. It's cool. I feel like fans also take a bit more ownership over over you, but in a good way. They kind of take a bit of ownership over the album.
Yeah.
So I think you did the same, like
putting the names in the
anyone that backs the campaign gets their name put in the thank yous in the
credits sort of bit in the
sleeve notes. And with the 5-year anniversary of our album being today, we released like a sort of limited edition like box set, and a lot of those people that backed that original campaign got in touch and said, I've just bought the box set, it's like amazing, it's been 5 years already, and
they feel like it's their album too.
Yeah, absolutely. And I noticed when we put out Pucker Sounds, because we had so many backers this time, we had to do it over like 2 pages or whatever. And
I remember it clearly when I had to edit it all and put the copy in. My Photoshop was dying because there was just so much text.
Oh, and it's terrible, like because of whatever reason, like there's admin errors or people don't put their details in properly. People do get left out, and it's shit, isn't it?
Yeah.
But, it is what it is. But generally, everyone gets included. We try our best. And people love that, don't they? And I remember like seeing when Pucker Sounds come out, people like posting like a picture of the Candy Street inlay with their name on it, and a picture of the Pucker Sounds. People being like, "Wow, there's so many more names now." But I was happy to back the first one, and glad I'm still on the journey. So it's really cool. You'll never have that on a record deal. Like you'll never have those kind of experiences, and that. I think it's wicked that you can cut out the middleman in this day and age, and fans can, help fund your record and take pride in a bit of that ownership. I think that's a really cool thing.
Yeah, no, I do. I had something I was going to say, but I can't remember what it was now.
Are you going to crowdfund your next album?
Am I going to crowd my
question?
Well, I was going to say that earlier. I'm one of those like, slight like the second one. I'm like, oh, should I do it again? Should I not? Yeah, I am, unless something else happens that I'm trying to, sort out in the background. But I've got multiple plans. We're at a position where we'd like to attempt to pitch to specific labels, but we're not going to sit there waiting around for ages, because, we're going to say we're going to pitch, but by March or April, we haven't, I'm just making these up by the way, but March or April, we haven't heard anything back. Then we ignore it and we'll do it again in the future, but like we'll crowdfund straight away. So crowdfunding is like, it's not the backup plan, it's probably more the main plan, because pitching to a label is going to be really tricky. It might not happen, or it might happen, but we might not be happy with the deal, or the money that we're going to receive from doing it isn't worth it when we could just do it, and then come back at a later time when we're hopefully big or whatever. So I want to crowdfund, but I've got to the point where I have a couple of other
options open. Yeah, I think as well, you guys are in a slightly different position to us in that you've got management that have got artists with record deals and stuff that are doing well.
Well, the thing I like about what I've heard about the other bands that have got labels is they still have a bit more, like...
It's like quite an indie setup, isn't it?
Yeah, which is like, you know, they still have a bit more, you know, they can still hire their own, I don't know, shows, or they don't have to abide by like booking agents all the time or being paid. Like they can go, because I thought that, you know, some labels would kind of, you know, if you wanted to do what we've done, where you've hired the Electric Ballroom yourself or whatever, I thought that you weren't allowed to do that. Like they're still allowed to have that kind of control over stuff and still choose what certain things that happen. Whereas I thought once the label's involved, you kind of like, all right, well there you go. You kind of don't have as much of a say. But the bands that we are on the management team, our managers manage as well. They all seem to, you know, they still all say similar things that we've spoken about in terms of like
they've still got like a DIY ethos.
Yeah, and there's still labels out there that they maybe would say like, you know, unless it's the right deal, it's like it's not worth it and things like that. Thing I remembered is just like about crowdfunding, quickly to jump back, is the kind of perspective that we were talking about, being apprehensive and stuff. And you know, you said about putting names in the album. I think sometimes we don't realise, and I'm not saying this for like, you know, for us to be egotistical about it or whatever, but if I got, you know, FYI, I'm a massive fan of like Enter Shikari, Don Broker, Bring Me. If any of them, you know, wrote my name on their album, I'd fucking lose my... I'd be like over the moon, like, oh my God, look, my name's in their album. Like our producer's name's in their album, and I get excited. I get excited over it. But like the way I get over that, although we might be a small band and, you know, in the grand scheme of what bands are in our heads of like how big they can get, the fans that do end up crowdfunding, they feel exactly the same for our small band that we might feel for a big band. And I think it's a perspective we don't think bands and musicians don't really think that people see it like that, but they some of the people I've met talk to me like I am Ollie Sykes from Bring Me, and I'm like, what? But that not saying that it's, but like,
it's weird, isn't it?
It doesn't matter about how big you are. It's about they love your music and think that you're doing something special, and they're
a proper fan.
And that's what I mean. Like having your name in that thing for our small little band seems silly to us, maybe.
But you don't realise what a big deal it is to other people.
It's just as big as a deal for me to get into some huge bands, you know, my name in their album, as it is to someone getting into my album from their perspective. And I think musicians sometimes we don't think
hard,
about it like that.
Because like, unless you're like a fucking egomaniac, and you're always going to kind of like wrestle with that a bit.
Yeah,
but you have got to like, once you've done it like once or whatever, a crowdfunding campaign or like a merch line or a certain amount of sales, you have to kind of, you know, that's enough validation to go, all right, people do give a fuck, do you know what I mean?
And that's all. It's not really an ego thing, it's more like...
but it's just recognising you've got an audience there that, you know, hold you in that high regard with other artists that might be massive, do you know what I mean? But when you might see it on their Spotify Wrapped or whatever, do you know what I mean? At the end of the year, you're getting tagged and, you know, you're in a list with Bring Me the Horizon and Enter Shikari and Slipknot or whoever, and you know, so like, that's a big thing as well. It's like, you know, a bit pricing things like T-shirts and vinyl, and maybe other experiences like lyric sheets and coming to the studio and rehearsals and that, putting a value on that's, you know, perhaps those bands would do the same, and getting your head around the fact that you might not have as many fucking people that would buy it as would for those bands, but there are people out there that see you in that same light as those big bands. They love your music just as much as they love those bands, or maybe more. Do you know what I mean? You're in that, you know, you're one of their favourite bands, so they'll pay the same for your album or experience that you're offering as they would Bring Me or whoever, you know.
Almost sometimes they like it more because they're like, we're at the beginning of it.
DIY thing, I think so actually.
Like,
even
everyone has that natural. I don't know why, but everyone likes to be. You know, when you say, you know, if I showed you a new song and I was like, before they blew up, and then they blew up. Like, I heard of them before they blew up.
Like, it goes back to that sort of taking ownership.
I don't know why we do that, but everyone kind of has a little bit of that in them of like, that was my band before. Yeah. Even like my mates in school, when they'd hear a band, they'd be like, yeah, I've heard them like years ago. Get over it. But why? I don't know. But that's what people. Yeah. So when you're doing if it's your first crowdfund, some people that really, really believe in your music and think that they want you to go far, they'll have that ownership of like that. Because people just naturally do have that in them.
I think another thing as well is, obviously DIY musicians. You're starting from like the ground up. Most of us are used to being fucking skint or, having to live really frugally. So maybe, going back to the whole, where does the shame come from? We're probably looking at it at times through, like, with our own bank balance, thinking like, fucking hell, like,
I did that for our
pay 140 quid for that. Do you know what I mean? Or whatever it is, like, and you forget that actually, like, you've got fans out there that have got more money than you've got. Do you know what I mean? That are doing all right, that would spend that on music that they're that they love. A box set or a t-shirt or a concert or whatever else. Like, DIY musicians being frugal and having periods of being skint sort of comes with the territory, doesn't it? So because we're in that position, and we've been in that position plenty of times when we're thinking about doing something like this, that's a big part of where the sort of mental hurdles come from, because we're sort of we're judging it based on our own personal finances as opposed to just a general, like,
I mean,
what people can afford.
I think like I definitely don't buy as much stuff as our fans have bought of my stuff. For example, I don't think, I've probably got like one Enter Shikari hoodie or whatever, but I'm so invested in my own project that I ain't got time to or money to think about buying. But I'll always go see them at a show, and I'll 100%, Blink 182 put their tickets up. Did I have any money to pay for them? No. Would I have found it? Yes, because I wanted to see them.
Have you got tickets?
No, I didn't.
They were like obscenely expensive.
They're obscenely expensive, but I would have found
like
it
200
for like
quid or something.
They think they started at like 100 and so. But anyway, my point was that I would have found it for them. But what I'm saying is, I was thinking about it as like when I did the crowdfunding, it's like, I wouldn't buy that. But I wouldn't buy that because I'm too busy thinking about my project. Whereas there's people that aren't in bands or don't have that.
It's like a hobby to them.
They don't think like I do, because they have a different. Their life's different to mine, and what their passions are. My passion is to make music, and I obviously listen to it as well. But my first passion is I want to make music and then listen in between.
Sure.
Whereas they want to just be at every festival, every gig. Like, look how many. Some people go to every single festival within their genre throughout the whole summer. I wouldn't do that unless I was playing it, because that's what I want to do. So I think when you're pricing things, like you say, and when you're looking at what you got to try and look at what other bands are doing.
Put yourself in like the mindset of the fan as opposed to the artist mindset.
I probably wouldn't buy those things, but it's not because I'm right or wrong. It's because I have different priorities in terms of I want to. Everyone has different viewpoints and stuff, so you've got to get out of your own head.
Yeah, definitely.
And think about how a fan would maybe.
Yeah, and it's listening to your audience as well. Like you put, because what kind of encouraged us to do it was people were asking for the album. When's there an album coming? We were putting these ads out with music videos for singles that we put out, and everyone was asking for an album right from the sort of first music video release, first single release, Rickety Old Train. And I'd had such a bad experience signing a record deal in my previous band, and a friend of mine had crowdfunded his album. So I thought, well, if we're going to do it, let's just go that route, do you know what I mean, and go proper DIY with it. And we sort of took the leap of fear and, had some expensive products on there, and then some like, you could donate as little as you wanted sort of thing, and some, cheaper items like CDs, badges, whatever. But people gave a fuck and bought expensive video props and you know, like we raised enough money to make the album. So once we'd done it once and then delivered the album and people were enjoying it and asking us like, we're ready to go again, like when's the next one coming? Like, fuck it, like the audience want it. Like they backed us the first time. The reaction for this album's been great. I'd like to make another record and you know, remain in like create with keep our sort of creative output going, and if the demand's there, if a few hundred people want it, like let's just throw another page up and see if it works again. And it did, you know, and that's actually sort of turned into a business with like a touring business and a merchandise business and everything else. So yeah, I think it's about putting yourself in the fan mindset, rolling the dice, trying it once, and if it works once and you deliver a great album, then you can keep doing it and your audience will keep backing you.
Greetings listeners, Jake from Decent Mastering here, really pleased to be involved with a podcast whose ethos aligns with my own, helping independent artists. My Pay What You Feel mastering service offers inclusivity to music creators with tighter budgets, giving quality audio at a price that suits them. To get in contact, send an email to decentmastering@gmail.com or send me a DM on Instagram @decentmastering. Enjoy the rest of the show.
Next thing I want to talk about is the platforms that we've used. So
we
started with Indiegogo. They sort of give you a 2-month window to raise the funds. And what we did was we picked an option called flexible funding. And that means that even if you don't hit your 100% goal, it's your choice as to whether you want to go ahead and fulfill the products. So yeah, and also they take a commission. They take 5%, and then there's some charges like credit card charges and stuff on top of that. So there's a few downsides to it.
Was it 10%?
I feel like it was more, yeah, but I googled it earlier because I couldn't remember exactly, and it says 5%. So I don't know whether they've reduced it.
Yeah, maybe they've reduced it,
or maybe it was 10% when those other charges came in on certain payments or whatever. So you've got the 2-month window, you've got a commission that you've got to pay out, and then you've also got the thing of you don't get the funds straight away. They kind of, you know, release it in stages once the campaign's finished.
Fail safe for in case a band mugs it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
which is a good thing to
so
have in place.
Those are kind of the negatives. I mean, one of the good things about having a 2-month window is it creates a bit of an urgency. Do you know what I mean? So maybe you can raise the funds quicker, because you know when the campaign's sort of coming into its last week, you can really rally your fans and say there's a time limit. That definitely worked because we got a spike at the end. But you discovered a really great hack on Shopify, which is the e-commerce platform we use to sell merch and tickets. There's like a crowdfunding plugin, isn't there? Like an app that you can buy.
Yeah, well, basically, first of all, I feel like I'm a Shopify rep these days because I'm always promoting anyone to use Shopify over other things. Basically, myself and my band members didn't want to lose that 10%. We trusted in ourselves that we're going to, you know, that money's going to be spent on we're not going to keep it if we didn't or anything like that. So I decided that I was like, we need to find a way where we can use a different platform that, you know, has a little bit longer than 2 months, because I think 2 months sometimes is too short if you're a smaller band that maybe doesn't have as many.
So would you say that was more important than giving up the commission?
No, the commission was big as well, because I thought to myself, if I got lucky and raised 20 grand, you know, that's 2 grand, quite a lot of money to be taken from you. So yeah, I think it was based on the commission and a little bit of the time frame of how long they last. And I also didn't like, not that I'm shitting on Indiegogo, because Indiegogo obviously served you well, and it's still serving people well, but is that you couldn't order more than one product at a time. Like, you could only pick one item,
Yeah,
and then you'd have to
that
pay.
was a massive drawback.
Then
I
you have
forgot
to
about
pay
that.
for it and pay for shipping.
You couldn't
Then
add multiple items to
Yeah,
cart,
then
could
you go. Then you'd be like, oh, but I wanted that as well. Oh, I got to go. And then, you know, if I was thinking as me, I'd probably buy that one thing and go, oh fuck it, I'll do it tomorrow. I can't be bothered, and then probably forget and never do it. So I wanted a platform that avoided that as well.
And there's no upsell functionality, is there?
No, but basically, yeah, it's a massive e-commerce platform, and people use it to sell their merchandise. But the big functionality of it that I like is that if they don't have something that you want on like that their service offers in terms of like, you know, maybe the style of the website or just little functions that you might think of, like, oh, it doesn't cross out if I put a sale on, it doesn't cross out the number and say the original and the new to help show how much has come off. Little things like that. There's always an app for it because they have an app functionality where either Shopify have made these apps or people like me or you that maybe know how to code or whatever have made these apps, been approved by Spotify, and a lot of them are free. Some of them cost money, but that's like I think that's what really helps set one of the things that helps set Shopify apart is that there's always like other apps that can sort of almost empower what you've already got there.
Yeah, because we've used it for tickets. There's like ticket
there's
app, isn't there?
There's ticket apps. There's
what's that, guest manager?
Which is company guest manager. The app's called Event Ticketing on Shopify. But yeah, it's basically just in short, it's a great e-commerce platform that you can customize to fuck basically. And if you want to sell a t-shirt with a CD on top of it at a cheaper rate, you can put an upsell app that will make sure it pops up saying like 10 minutes left and you'll get 10% off this. And you know, it's just massively customizable, and that is what we wanted, something like that. We already had a Shopify set up for our merchandise anyway, and I loved how it looked. I loved how smooth it was for people to be able to buy more than one product at a time. So I just was like, me and my bandmates were like, well, isn't there a way we can maybe work out how to do a crowdfund on here? And all it really is just finding an app that can show the timer and how much you've made and how many people are backing it or whatever it is that makes it look a bit more pledgy crowdfund so that people can see. Because you could just leave it on the shop and update people and be like, oh, we've made, but it's not the same. It doesn't feel like a crowdfund. So we found a super simple app that it's called Sales Count Up. There's loads more with different methods and whatever, but Sales Count Up is just really simple to use, does what you need. You can customize it a bit. If you know how to design, you can replace the image of the $sign to, like, you know, some sort of banned version of your $sign or whatever. And it shows it has more. I only ever make it show how many people have backed it and the money that you're making. But you can add multiple other different things. And it's not necessarily a crowdfund app. It's just an app that, you know, anyone can use for different reasons. But I worked out a way to use it for crowdfunding. And
so do you manually input like the backers text?
Yeah, I write that. So it doesn't. I think people use it for, like, you know, if they're raising awareness for how many, you know, plastic bottles have been recycled and things like that.
Okay.
Like, they do it for, like that.
So it's just like a meter.
It's just a meter that you can change the text. Yeah, literally.
Sales turns it into a crowdfunding page.
Yeah, and if you've never sold anything on Shopify, you don't need to pay for the app. And if you have sold stuff on Shopify, it's better to pay for the app, which is only like $4, so like let's say £4 a month or whatever, and you can stop it when your crowdfund's over. But the only reason I'm just mentioning is like paying for it is like if you need to put a date of like when you want the meter to start tracking what's come in, you have to pay for that meter. Whereas if you've never sold anything on Shopify, you don't need to pay for a date because it will just start when you start. Do you get what I mean?
Yeah, I see what you're saying. So that's $4 a month on the paid.
Yeah, or $4.99.
There's no commission, is there?
No, it's just a little.
Rather than giving up that 5 to 10% odd on another platform.
No, Shopify. Sorry, yes, sir. So Shopify is $19.99 for the basic package, which does everything you need. I'm pretty sure it's $19.99, and then Shopify, like every other platform, will always, any platform you use, whether it's another crowdfunding site or Wix or whatever, they all take a little small percentage of your transactions, because that is what everyone does. Even when you use PayPal, it does it.
Yeah, is it them, or is it Stripe and PayPal, or is it all of the above?
All of them.
Take a little
yeah,
bit.
all
It's
of them.
Tiny, isn't
it's
it?
very small. Yeah, it's like barely noticeable. But so all you're paying for is $19.99 to have a Shopify account that you can customize to your liking, and potentially a $4.99 app that you can uninstall when you finish with your crowdfunding.
So you save a fortune on that,
and you get the money straight away, because it's a shop that.
Yeah,
and they will keep a night, like, you know, if you don't fulfill something, like they it's still like a legitimate website. It's not just going to here's loads of, you can keep taking, you know, money or whatever. They track what you're doing, and you know, if you've not fulfilled that item for a certain amount of time, like they would obviously they're going to pick up.
Yeah, so the fact that you get the money, the orders like in as you go,
means you can start paying for the things you need to pay for,
start
instead
funding
of
the merch,
like
the recording, the manufacturing. You know, obviously you've got to be sensible with that and make sure that, you know, when you start doing that, you know you've raised enough to, you know, see the album release through and fulfill all the orders. But yeah, it just helps with cash flow. It means that you get that money, like when the sale comes in, it hits your PayPal, your Stripe. You haven't got to wait until the campaign's over and then wait for another platform to stagger those payments. Yeah, you don't have the commission, and as you say, you don't have the 2-month window for the funding. You can run it for a long time. I think ours has been running for, I think we launched it in April and it's like November now, and we hit our goal about a month ago or so. But yeah, it just takes that pressure off a little bit.
You can still, like, you know, in the descriptions of your products or on the homepage of your crowdfunding site, say, like, you know, expected release, or like we're aiming to release, so that
you
your
can
fans
set that cut off, can't you? You can actually, you could do your own, like,
well, yeah, you could just be like, right, we're giving ourselves 3 months. If we don't make it, we don't make it. Like, and you can shut it off. But if you don't want to do that, you know, or you want to give yourself one, but if it's not really there yet, you can keep it going. There's no one stopping you from doing like quicker or shorter or whatever. And then obviously people can buy multiple products, which was my favourite.
Yeah,
well, I know it sounds really silly, but I remember seeing it on your thing and being like, why is there no function? Unless maybe I'm an idiot.
Mate, no, I'm pretty sure that's because I tried as well.
But I think it's because it's set up to be a crowdfunding, so it's almost set up not necessarily for musicians. It's more like a shop style. It's more set up to be like you've pledged like for this and you've pledged that, because they were called pledges on Indiegogo. Whereas like
backers, I think they were, weren't they?
No, pledge.
Oh, pledges,
yeah. And whereas if you've brought out free t-shirt designs and you've got a fan out there that wants all free straight away right now because they don't want to miss out on maybe running out of stock or whatever it is, they can go add to cart, done.
It also gets messy with the shipping as well, doesn't it?
Yeah, because then
they have to pay the individual
which then might put them off because they're like,
and that mounts up. But yeah, I remember, you know, we fucking didn't pick up on that until like the third time we'd done it, you know. And
until I walked in the room and was like, hello, what's going on? No, I'm joking.
Yeah, no, I mean, you were the one that flagged it up, to be fair, Geese. So, but yeah, so we just found that Shopify, you know, there's just, you know, a lot more pros to using.
It's just custom. I think it's just so. It's easy to, you know, you don't need to be a web designer to be able to make a simple website. There's a lot of like, you know, if you can use Photoshop and make your own banners and stuff, then yeah, that has a little edge. But if you just need this thing set up, you know, you don't need to be some crazy coder or whatever to make the website look cool. You just, and yeah, if you want to go further than just paying for Shopify and the little crowdfund app, you've got upsell apps, you've got tickets. Like the great thing I think about Shopify is if you didn't have it already and you're using it for a crowdfunding project, once the crowdfunding's over, you've then got a merch store, and and then you can keep, you know, you don't have to, you can just use it as a merch store after and keep it running as like a normal your band's website where you sell your tickets or your merch or whatever. You don't have to just stop after
we use it for everything now, apart from our fan club and our free plus shipping CD sales funnels. We use ClickFunnels for that. And that was actually my next point. So the last point that I have, so if you're kind of listening and you're at the point where you're just starting to build some fans on social media, but you haven't yet started to monetize that fan base, we've sort of, so when we did our debut album Crowdfunder, we wasn't aware of this. So the first time that we did crowdfunding, that was the first time we monetized the fan base, and those 197 people, God bless them, that backed that first album. Yeah, it was the first time that we actually made any kind of income. But what we've since discovered, and what we've helped artists that work with Hookings implement as like a kind of precursor to a crowdfunding campaign. So we've discovered that you can build a customer list through like a low ticket introductory products offer. And once that gets to like a certain amount of customers that have bought that first product, sort of 200 to 300, that puts you in a really good position to raise between 5 and 10 grand off those customers to go and make your first record. So how we do this is we offer something called a free plus shipping product, and it's usually an EP, so a CD, or it might be an album if an artist has managed to record an album before monetizing their fan base through their own funding, or maybe they self-produced it on the cheap or whatever. But yeah, essentially that first offering, whether it's an EP or an album, you get CDs manufactured and you offer them as a free plus shipping product. So the CD's free, so the RRP is free, and they just pay the postage and packaging costs on the CD. That way you're kind of asking fans for £3.95 first, as opposed to like help me fund my album, and I mean, look, they could donate a pound or whatever and do that, but that's not usually what happens. Like, people tend to, buy a CD at the very least, but a CD nowadays, RRP is sort of between 10 and 15 quid. So that's still quite a lot to ask, like, as a brand new artist with a fan base that have just come on board, asking them, saying, look, I'll give you the CD for free, just help me with the sort of, shipping and handling costs. It's a good way of onboarding people and building a bit of trust first and getting some customers, at that kind of lower price per purchase. But once you've built sort of 200 to 300 of those, and what happens as part of that kind of sales funnel is they sign up to your mailing list and give you permission to be recontacted as part of that deal. So you're getting their email address, phone number, postal address, and retargeting data on Facebook and Instagram. That's a great way of kind of building a bit of a customer base first. And when you then launch that crowdfunding campaign, you can text those 200 to 300 people, email those 200 to 300 people, do like a focused ad campaign on Instagram and Facebook that just targets those people. So it's, kind of cheap and an efficient way of targeting, your most engaged supporters that have already been monetized. And, the EP or the album that they've received on CD, they would have invested in that and got into you more as an artist, and if it's a great product, they're going to be much more warm to going, I'll back an album now. I've had this EP and this really cool with this great artwork, and it was signed and it was free and it come with a nice personalised message. Like, the artist really went above and beyond there. They're going to be much more warmed up to then going, I'll pre-order a vinyl for their debut album and back the cause, or I'll donate 30 quid or something. Do you know what I mean? So had I known about that when we were first releasing music and building a following on social media, I would have done the free plus shipping thing. I would have done an EP first on CD and built a bit of a customer list and offered like a cheaper product first, so that when we then launched the crowdfunding for the album, that would have been more impactful and we would have got more sales, upon launching it. You guys actually did that with an EP, didn't you?
Yeah, we did it with that EP, and we actually technically did it with the album for a little bit, but that was after it come out.
Oh yeah, I mean that's another way of we've also done that with our album and still do that. And
I'll add that into what I'm talking about, but yeah, because like we used. Do you want to know like what I used or like why we did it or how I felt about it? Because I think we started off with a poster. I think we like didn't have an EP, so we did a poster just to to give it a little go. And I was like, no one's gonna buy a poster. You know, about 50 people got one in the end, and I was like, oh my god, I'm famous. But some people probably still got that. But yeah, no, we
I've got mine.
we put the EP. I think we did like a pre-order for 2 weeks, but it was still we were like, we're doing a special deal. You get it for free. You just pay shipping. And, you know, you get some people that don't read the, not even small print, the in-your-face print, and get to the checkout bit and go, $3.95, I'm not paying that. It's like, we did say that, we say it's free, because you want to capture people if it's free, but, like, can't ship it for free, otherwise I'm going broke. So you put your nice messages in there, you explain why you're doing it. We always had a landing page that once they'd seen the advert, or if we were sharing it to all of our fans on our socials or whatever, you know, we'd explain at the end, like, all we ask is that you pay, like, you cover us the shipping because we don't want to go bankrupt, or like a little shit joke or whatever. And then, when they click over on the landing page, it doesn't just go straight to the product so you can buy it, because we want people to really see that, you know, you want the people that are getting it to not jump off when they see the shipping, so you explain it more detail. Like, why we're doing it, and it's also, be a bit more human.
Like a really personal note, isn't it? It's not like it's as far away from like a record company ad as possible. It's like personal message honestly, from the band.
No one else is doing it. Like, we're giving it, like, we've not got a company sending it to you, and they might, you know, we're doing it because we want to give it away, so that hopefully you see that we're worth liking and wanting to follow us on the journey. So. Yeah, we gave away our EP, we gave away our album in the future after we did the crowdfund, it come out, and we then did the album as well. And I think you mentioned, but the reason we do these is, to get these fans on board at like early doors that don't want to spend that £10 on a ticket or £20 on a t-shirt or whatever. But I think it works really, really well, because I was a bit apprehensive in the terms of like no one buys CDs anymore. They do. Even if they don't want to play it, they want to have the artwork or the signed thing or whatever. You know, it works better for some. It works for everyone. I don't think there's been someone where it's been like terrible, unless maybe it's been too early, or.
Yeah, I think it's been pretty successful across the board.
You can even we've even done it to completely blank canvas fans that haven't heard of us at all, because. Just a small little detail is you normally push an advert out to your existing data that fans or people that you know have watched your videos through data from Facebook or Instagram. But I did actually do the album for a couple of weeks to a completely cold audience that may have never heard of us ever.
And this is targeting like... So for Facebook and Instagram ads, targeting fan bases of bands similar to you guys.
So I would send it to people that are into Shikari, Don Broco, radio stations that match it or whatever. And we did actually sell like about 75 to 100 in a couple of weeks, and then those people actually ended up coming to our gig, like our little tour that we did from that CD, and would come up to us and be like, I got this CD for free.
Was that the total that you sold in the end, like around 100?
Oh no, sorry, there's timeline. I'm jumping timelines here. It's just worse than the Marvel universe. The EP we sold 350 odd.
Nice.
I could be wrong.
And that was before the crowdfunding.
That was before we crowdfunded.
Yeah.
So I sold about 300 to 350.
I remember it being around 300.
Yeah. Then we did the crowdfund, gave the album away as part of a perk in the crowdfund for a tenner or whatever it was. Then we did a little free plus shipping for the album to
onboard new fans.
Yeah, onboard new fans.
That's an important point now. Like we've done
you don't have, you can do it again.
Yeah, so
and
once
fans don't just your current fans aren't angry because
no. I mean, it's like they've had it upon release or whatever. It's been out a couple of months. It's on a deal now. It's like anything that goes on sale. So, yeah, I mean that has been great. You know, we've done that for our first album and our third album. We've never done it for the second for some reason. But yeah, the first album still we still run ads all the time now, 3+ shipping ads on that, and we've sold thousands of CDs. You know, through that method of offering the RRP for free, customer just pays for the shipping. So we're always onboarding new fans with that. So yeah, it's not something that you kind of just do and do 200-300 sales, then crack on with crowdfunding. You can always, you know, use that as a way to, when you're running out on Facebook or Instagram and you're targeting people that like bands similar to you, you can track them based on engagement. So if they've watched like 50% or more of an entire music video ad on Facebook from having never heard of you, they're going to be really warm to what you're doing. So you can then retarget them with that 3+ shipping offer for the album that track that they watched on the first ad is from. And yeah, it's just a really great way of getting more fans into your customer base. Do you know what I mean? Offering them something on a deal, like have the CD for free, just cover the shipping for us. You get their, you kind of get their details, because obviously when they're on the streaming sites and everything else, you haven't got the data of your fan,
no.
You know, where they're from or anything like that. You've got no way of retargeting them.
You can just see where people are listening.
Yeah, you see the location.
You can't work out.
You haven't got their details.
You can't make it so that when they're listening to you, they go on Facebook and see your advert because of Spotify. You can only do it because they have to have seen something on Facebook.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
Instagram.
And once you have the email address and the phone number and the postal address, you've got all these sort of return path bits of data on your most engaged fans. The fans
I didn't.
Bothered.
We didn't mention that. Sorry, but like one of the main reasons you do that, other than just to get, you know, people listening to music, is the main. Or maybe you did, but the main goal in the first place is to get emails.
Yeah, exactly.
So that you can
list,
bypass social media when you want to, you know, when you want to crowdfund those 300 people that bought the EP.
Mm-hmm.
You know, not everyone's going to open the email, but you can directly email them all through MailChimp or any other like mailing services that you use, like directly. So you don't have to hope they saw your organic post on Facebook or Instagram. You can just go straight to their email address, and that's why you made it. Like, obviously the goal is then because you can then crowdfund using that data. But that was when we first did it. That was kind of like
that's the main reason.
It's about
really.
Getting that.
Yeah, it's. I mean, it's all those things really.
It's loads of things combined.
Yeah, it's kind of getting someone, you know, offering someone something cheap to begin with, like rather than, you know, going straight in for like pre-order my vinyl sort of thing, giving them a chance to buy something off you for cheap.
Almost giving them the power to test you out.
Yeah, it's a bit of a weird like taster, isn't it? But like then as a result, you're getting their data, and this is the data of people that have actually bothered to pull their card out and fucking give you their card details and buy a CD off you. You know, in this modern era where CD sales are still a thing, but nowhere near what they were, you know, back in the fucking mid-90s and whatever, early noughties. So, yeah, it's just a great way of building like what we call a hot audience. So you've got the cold audience is the people that you're targeting, you know, through your initial ad, and that's based on, you know, let's target people that are interested in bands that we think we sound like. So in our case, it's Specials, Madness, The Beat, etc., all the two-tone bands. That's the cold audience. You convert them, and they watch the music video ad, and then you've got them in kind of an audience, and you hold that data for up to 365 days. So anyone that watches 50% or more of that music video, you know, is into what you're doing. They're then classified as warm audience, and then they become hot audience once they're monetized. So it's a great way of building that hot audience from the ground up. So yeah, that's just sort of, you know, a bit of closing advice really. before you do a crowdfunding campaign, test the water a bit first, and go for that early monetization with like a cheaper product, a taster product, we'll call it.
Yeah, we'll call it a taster.
Yeah. And I don't know if that'll stick, that one. And get some fans monetized and on board first. Build a list so that when you do your launch, you can send a text out to 200-300 people, send an email out, even send something in the post, with a QR code for the crowdfunding. And as Brad says, you won't have to completely rely on social media reach. Last night we launched a product, it's 5-year anniversary bundle for our debut album, and we sent an email and a text out first and had like 60 sales before we even posted about it organically on social media. So it's important, because those platforms, it's been said many times, like MySpace was the place for musicians. That was the original social media platform, and that disappeared overnight once. Do you know what I mean? So hopefully it won't, but you never know. Some of these platforms that you've built massive followings on, they own that data. So it's really important for you to obtain that, and doing that free plus shipping product first, building up the customers. That'll give you more confidence as well when you're launching your crowdfunding. So I think that's a pretty good place to conclude for tonight.
Yeah, in a nutshell, go crowdfund your albums.
Yeah, nice one, Brad.
Don't ask, don't get.
Cheers, mate.
See you later.
Oi people, Silky here. Thanks for listening to the Importance of Crowdfunding for Independent Artists episode of the Life of a Musician podcast. If you're a DIY artist that's thinking about going down the crowdfunding route, we hope that this has been a valuable listen for you. If you'd like to hear more conversations exploring the minds of creative music entrepreneurs, you can check out more episodes of the Life of a Musician podcast on all major streaming platforms now. Nice one.